you can give it in more detail. Why exactly did you like leave the SCP Foundation? Like just leave the journal behind? Because I've heard a lot of things right from other people, like saying how you were going to make it a community server and all that kind of stuff, and then you just So what was your main reason?
So essentially, what's happening here is the group has been on some sort of hibernation
Right.
for a long time. Um, then it's partially my fault. Obviously, I've been neglecting a lot of my duties as administrator and as the group leader. I did appoint someone in my place, which was supposed to be temporary, but it became a long-term solution. I gave him almost all the authority, but apparently that was also not enough.
I heard that there's a lot,
Um,
not a lot of not a lot of funding, or like not a lot I think that could go toward the foundation, like development wise, because of that also. Or what do you have to say about that?
so the group always had funding, and
Right.
and not a little amount of it as well, but it had always had a good amount of funding. Although as the person who was as the person who was the only person who handled the funding in that group specifically, I made a decision not to allow the council or MAD or anyone actually to handle the funding or fund new projects with that funding because of the fear that a new project would flop or would not go well or would take too much time,
Okay.
and then we'll lose what we have as well. I always wanted to hold it in there to see either for a real emergency or eventually for code red to use.
Right. And I've heard that also because I've talked to like a lot of people, like former O5 members, which I will probably keep an eye on for this one. That I heard that you also said that there was no funding actually. Was that like a part of the thing of like probably like the fear of you like saying I didn't want anyone to like handle the thing, so you just said that we didn't have any funding for
No,
the O5
no, I
council?
don't want anyone to handle the things, although I never saw it fit to actually share with the council. Like in hindsight, it might have been a mistake. It's not actually, but in hindsight, it might have been. I never saw it fit to share with them any financial decisions or analytics or motives, since I
Okay.
never really thought or saw any of them qualified to handle it as much as I do.
Okay. So, in because of that, is that why you also said that again to the O5 council, or like one of the O5 council members, that there was not a lot of funding that for the foundation to use, or
So it is true. It's true in some sense. The group itself didn't have nearly as much funding as it used to in its peak days or its glory days. We were making jack shit specifically in that game. Um, so it is true that the group didn't have. You could say it didn't have much funding, if any at all.
well, a lot of that
What we
was.
did
I mean,
have.
I saw you, because people see I saw the screenshots of you like taking like I think
Yeah,
1.7 million.
before I
Yeah.
sold the group, that's true. That's correct. Before I sold the group, I made a last payout to myself since the group funds were not a part of that deal. I made a last payout
Okay.
to myself, which is intended to be used for Code Red.
Okay. So all of that money that you put in there, that was for Code Red, not for the foundation itself. It was for Code Red, but there were funds in a way. It was just reserved for something else, really. So the
That's
foundation.
true. And they weren't really reserved. It was just the fear of the fear of unlocking these funds, the fear that eventually it will backfire,
Okay.
and then we'll lose the little bit that we did have. That was the main fear.
Why did you? So, I mean, with 1.7 million Robux, right? I guess we can go on transition to the next thing. Selling it would seem kind of, is it? Because wouldn't you agree that it would be time for the foundation itself to just lay this go a peaceful transition just down? I mean, selling it like this, and I mean, I've heard that like the reason why you sold was because the O5 council they went behind their back, so you went behind theirs. I mean, in that kind of sense, that's kind of scummy, in my personal opinion. Like getting kind of like revenge for that, and then just letting the foundation die. But what is your response to just like selling it? Like, why would you? Why did you sell it?
So there's a few layers of thought, and there's a few things that we need to understand before we can understand before we can get to that decision of selling it. So
Okay.
there's a few motives for it. The first one would be the state of the group. It's very clear that the group was practically dead for I think over half a year, and heavily declining for 2 years straight. I've been personally neglecting it in favor of real life and Code Red. Um, I've been just not here as much as I should have, and I didn't have the time, motivation, or energy to put into that group specifically because I was also preoccupied with my other projects.
Right.
Um, and that's the state of the group. That led to the council. Eventually, it led to the council disbanding the group behind my back,
Well, I
and
mean, there were. Well, I mean, there had to be talks, right? I mean, the council there were talks about like being a community server. You had the intentions of like you knew what was going to happen eventually. There had to be like some kind of thing where
so
like you knew what was
essentially,
going to
the
happen.
last thing I heard from the council was a proposal which I asked for to make turn the server into a community server. There all the talks of disbanding the group were 100% behind my back, unrelated to me, and I was not aware of them at all.
They didn't
So,
try to contact you
uh,
because that's what they said. I mean, they said that they tried to
no,
contact you about it. Like there was
of
like
course they
they
try to contact
tried.
me, not regarding disbanding the group. In my
Okay.
mind, up until they did that, in my mind, the last thing I did hear from the council was the attempt to turn it into a community server
Okay.
and not disband the group at all.
Okay.
So, continuing from that, we have sorry, we have the state of the group, and
Right.
then we have the council. So as much as I appreciate the council's efforts, and their efforts have been tremendous even without my cooperation, at the end of the day they did something they had no right to, and they decided to behind my back go ahead and just close my group, which is not their decision to make, especially without consulting me. um, and and all of that together, I came to the decision that first, the people who are left, the people who did do have their memories from this group, they do deserve something. They do deserve something. And in addition to the state of the group and the fact that the council went behind my back, led me to the conclusion that perhaps under a different leadership, the group could thrive much more and actually give the rest of the players what they deserve, which is quality gameplay.
Okay. And hold on. Let me just read something real quick. Actually, I'm doing something. Not doing something, but I'm just reading what because I was given like tons of like you know some screenshots about the current situation. Not a lot,
Yeah, go.
but so let me just right. This one's from I think a person called Original Riser. To keep you all updated. There's no way he's going to give us the group assets or the money. For Novus, this means that there is effectively no room to negotiate. The future of the group's persistence on Roblox. Being very direct, the group is done for. Hey, Itamar. However, Itamar has expressed a serious interest in becoming a Discord community server, like you said. This brings us to our own set of challenges, particularly that if Itamar says the on Discord, then he will have the same issues, or that we will have the same issues we have now, and we're likely to going to be unable to tell people why things are the way they are. Another one from Itamar himself. I think this is from screenshot. The console went behind my back and closed my group. I went behind their back and sold it. That's right. And it looks like the council is trying to salvage the group if possible with a little funding, but closing the group side may be the only way if funding is returned. So you have been told about this. Okay. I have a screenshot saying that like closing the Roblox side may be the only option if funding is restricted. So you have been told about this somewhat. In a way.
So the first screenshot, obviously,
I'm
was
gonna actually
in a
send you. I'm gonna send you all these actually, just so you can get more
yeah.
clear
Go ahead.
about it.
So the first screenshot is taken probably from a group chat that I am not in. I've never seen it before actually, so I haven't seen that screenshot. The second one would be from my DMs with Spirit. Wait one sec, let me read it. Um, yeah, so the second one is recognized, although it's it's a tiny message that has no meaning coming from Spirit. And while I did understand that closing the group was always on the table, and we talked about it ages before, it wasn't discussed to an extent where I can say, yeah, that was an option, or that was being actively debated on within the council. In addition to that, all their discussions were behind my back, so I couldn't possibly contribute or understand what their motives were or what they were talking about. Now, um, now more like, in order to understand this better, you also have to understand that when all this discussion is happening behind my back, and when I tell Riser and he builds an image in my mind, that I tell him, okay, give me a proposal for turning this into a community server, and he says yes, no problem. Then you have to understand that in my mind I'm building an image which is far from reality, because if the reality is that they're actively talking about closing the group, and in my mind I'm awaiting a proposal to turn this into a community server, then obviously we're not synced. um on top of that, I actually displayed to Riser specifically, in one of our discussions. I displayed my support of eventually even moving the group or giving it to someone else, the ownership of the group. I
Okay.
said that I'm not denying that as well. It did come up as an option in one of my meetings with him, and obviously not selling, but giving the group to someone else. That was an option, and I actually very clearly displayed it in one of our meetings.
Okay. All right. So the idea of the group being like, shut down, it was there, but the intentions and like you actually, it actively being a thing that you knew about it was not existent basically. It was just talked about in just,
I mean, in their mind, maybe it was the only option or the closest option, but in my mind, the image that I've received and the way that Riser portrayed things to me and the council portrayed things to me, it was not even on the table.
right. I talked like, again, I talked to the council, to them, and like also in the group chat, in like the Q&As I've been to. The council felt like they had, with the power that you gave them and with the things that how it represented, they feel like they had no choice, but this is the only way, that this is the only thing to do. Let's just, it's this time, time has passed, it's whatever. We just need to end this
Even
group peacefully.
even if it was the only option that was left, firstly, it's not their decision to make, and second, it, not only it's not their decision to make, I should be involved in this discussion, even if it's uh, even if we say, okay, don't be a dictatorship, maybe it's not only my decision to make. Yeah, maybe it's a decision that we all should have made together. I should have been involved in the thinking process and in the debates,
Okay.
um and I just wasn't. And I had no problem with it at first, because as far as I'm concerned, they were talking and discussing things that me and Riser were discussing. But then came that, and I see that it's far from true, because I had no problem not being in the discussions, because as far as my mind was concerned, all right, they're talking about what I'm talking with Riser about, turning into a community, about maybe having another project. I don't know, but me and Riser never talked about shutting the group down, um, and so I was very surprised, and that's why I'm bothered by the fact that I wasn't there. If they were actually talking about what me and Riser were talking about, then it's fine, but that's not the case.
Okay. And I mean, okay. So the fact that that's your reason for kind of like selling it, for because like you were not told, you say you were not told, and there are multiple point of views to everything. Like not everything, of course, and that's how a functional, like I wouldn't say democracy is not. I mean, that's how a functional society works. So you have to look at every single point. I mean, the one thing I have with Bearded, I do not agree with Bearded owning this foundation. That's my own. I'm not part of the community, so I cannot speak for. I don't have really any say in this. And morally, I'm not the one that owns the group, but me knowing Bearded, most of his projects that he has are mainly for cash grabs, and a lot of people fear that the SCP Foundation that you've built up based on just basically the cash grab aspect, has been there because you have an RP site, but it's always been respectable in a way. Like the way that how you've done it has been like throughout the years has been like a respectable thing, even if to some people it's still a cash grab. People seem to be afraid that that's always going to go out of the rug and just be like, you know what, full on just cash grab on both ends of the spectrum, serious RP and roleplay. How do you feel about him just ignoring that entire aspect and just turning it into full cash grab mode?
So I will agree with you that one of the things I'm most proud of is that under my leadership, The group, we always manage to find, in our good days, yeah, we always manage to find the right balance the between the revenue needs of the group and the gameplay needs of the community. So we always manage to find that balance there of actually making the game profitable without sacrificing too much of the gameplay to keep it fair, to keep
Anyway.
nice. Uh, so that is something that we were very good at. Although how Bearded is gonna do it, I'm not sure. I don't think it's fair to base off of his previous experiences in
Right.
terms of how he's going to design the upcoming games and how he's going to move. I will definitely be here for Bearded for a long time to guide him and and instruct him, give him advice on everything that he needs while he's getting set up and while he's setting up the group. But I don't know how Bearded's gonna do it. It's not really my place to tell him how to run his group, although I will definitely be here to advise him.
Right.
I have my trust in Bearded, and I do think that whatever he does has reasoning, and I'm sure that everyone will enjoy the gameplay regardless of the game passes and products that he's gonna sell.